Hi everyone. I hope you're doing very well. I hope your studies are going as per your schedule and you're learning something new every single day. Today we are going to learn something new. We're going to commence the Companies Act 2013. Yes, this is quite an important chapter. You may have heard of companies when you're studying your 11th and 12th in uh, business studies subject, or you may have come across the concept of company in terms of your accounts subject, or even when we have done the other acts, I might have mentioned the term company as an organization. Today, when we start this act, I want you to know that this is quite a lengthy act. It's not a lengthy portion for your foundation syllabus, but the act is quite lengthy and you will be learning a little bit of it in your foundation level. Literally, the foundation of the Companies Act is going to happen at your foundation level. In your intermediate, you will be studying another part of the act, and then the rest of the act, you will study it in your self-paced online module. So the whole act is not a part for your foundation syllabus. We are just going to learn the introduction to the act, just a couple of sections to understand the form of organization, which is a company. As far as your exams are concerned, this carries roughly about 21 marks from your entire paper. And a part of it is also coming under question number 1, which is a compulsory question. So there is no way that we are going to waste any chance in learning this chapter thoroughly. We'll start with the act slowly. In your ICI study material, this entire act is given in one go. What I have done is, so that it does not overwhelm you, we have divided this into several parts and you can study it part by part. If you feel like too many hours are there for Companies Act, study part by part. You can distribute your plan accordingly. You can see what is convenient for you. If you want to do the entire act at one shot, do as you please. If you want to divide it into different parts, you can do that as well. It varies from one student to another. I'm not going to give you a hard and fast way to do it. Do it as per your convenience, as long as you are meeting the objective of understanding the act. That is my intention, and that should be yours when we start with the chapter. So, Companies Act को साइड में रखते, company as a form of business organization. Why was it necessary? We learned why partnership was necessary. We learned why an LLP was necessary. Now, it was fine, right? If a person wants to start their business as a sole proprietor, they were starting, they were continuing. What is the problem? The problem there was unlimited liability. Company as a form of business organization gives you a basic advantage, a primary advantage, which is that in case of a company as an individual, the member liability is limited, which is quite motivating for any person to opt for this form of business organization. So member का जो liability है, that liability will be limited. This is one of the most exciting and tempting features for a person to open company as a form of business organization. One more, which for me is the primary reason that people should opt for forming a company over any other form, is that companies have got something called as a separate legal entity. Company is a separate legal entity and it has got a status which is distinct from that of its members. Iska example I will give you. Let's say that Mr. X has taken a loan from DV, a loan of rupees 10 lakhs. These are two individuals. Mr. X has taken a loan from DV. Tomorrow, if Mr. X defaults or does not repay the loan, DV will be able to file a case on Mr. X and recover the money from Mr. X. Okay? Done. Now let's take a case where Mr. X is a member of a company. What is the name of the company? X and Co. He has formed a company and he is one of the members of X and Co. And X and Co. has taken a loan of rupees 10 lakhs from DB. Now, X and Co. failed to repay that loan. X and Co. defaulted in repaying the loan. DV can file a case on X and Co, but DV cannot file a case on Mr. X. And this is the concept of separate legal entity. So, two primary reasons why a person would opt for opening a company as a form of organization is that it has limited liability and it is a separate legal entity. We will study both of these features in detail when we commence the act. So, ये तो basic idea था why a person would want to opt for company as a form of running the business. Eventually, when we see the details of the features of a company and the types of companies, there are a lot more reasons why people would prefer company as a form of business organizations. I'm not going to tell you every single thing in the introduction part. I want you to know that when it comes to Companies Act, we will be taking our own pace in order to understand the chapter, because this is something that you're going to carry forward even in your intermediate level and even while you're working. So your concepts have to be very clear, and I may not exactly stick to the order that is given in the ICAI material. So that you understand in a better way, I have made a few changes in the order of the content. The content is obviously going to be the same. It is an act. It is going to be the same anywhere, but the order of the content might change. So you stick to referring to my material, which is exactly the order of the video. So let's start with part 1 of the Companies Act 2013. In this part, we will be learning about two concepts. One is the meaning and the features of the company, and there is another concept called as corporate veil, which is basically the detail of the concept of separate legal entity. So let's begin. What in this I want to do is not begin with the introduction. So we'll see the introduction later on. It's a little technical, so we'll leave the introduction now. You have your 6.2 which talks about meaning and its features, company ke meaning and features. Isme bhi leave the meaning aside. Let's start with the features, and then I will bring you back to the meaning and the introduction. I know it might sound a little weird, but trust me, I know what I'm doing. So we'll start with the features of a company, which could be a direct question for your exam as well. And content, as far as possible, stick to the language of the law. What is given in the statute, we'll stick to that even when you're going to learn for the exam. So step 1, hum class mein saath karenge, which is understanding. Step 2, the learning part, you will have to do it. And step 3, how to prepare and how to write an exam, we'll do it together again. So our first feature, separate legal entity. What I just told you, a company is different from its members. Let's understand that in detail. So when a company is registered, it is clothed with a legal personality. As soon as a company is registered, the company will get a legal personality. That means a company will become a person. Company itself will become a person. So if Mr. X opens a company or forms a company called X and Co. X and Co becomes a person, and Mr. X is also another person. But these two people are separate. There is a separate entity which is X and Co, and there is a separate individual which is Mr. X. You cannot say Mr. X himself is the company. A company is separate from that of the person who formed it. That is the meaning of separate legal entity. As soon as it is incorporated, it comes to have almost the same rights and powers as a human being. Its existence is distinct and separate from that of its members, which is what I just told you. Members are separate, company is separate. Its existence is distinct and separate from that of its members. And as soon as a company is incorporated, a company can own property, have a bank account, raise loans, incur liabilities, and enter into contracts, because it becomes a person. Definitely not a natural person, it becomes an artificial person. So as an artificial person, let's say X and Co here, X and Co can own property, have a bank account, raise loans, incur liabilities, or enter into contracts, since X and Co is a person in itself. Two more points. It is at law a person which is different from the subscribers to the memorandum of association. So whoever forms it, the members who form it, are different from the company. Its personality is distinct and separate from the personality of those who compose it, which is the members. Even the members can contract with the company, acquire rights against it, or incur liabilities to it. What is the meaning of that? Say X and Co is a company here, and X is one of the members of the company. X and Co can definitely enter into contracts with the third party. But can Mr. X enter into a contract with X and Co being a member? Yes, the second point tells us that even members can contract with the company, acquire rights against it, or incur liabilities to it. For the debts of the company, only its creditors can sue it and not its members. So suppose the company owes any debt to a third party. The third party can file a case on the company because they are outsiders. Outsiders can file a case on the company. But when it comes to the members of the company, suppose they have contributed some money or contributed capital for the running of the company, those members, for the purpose of recovery of that, cannot file a case on the company. A third party can file a case on the company. A member, however, will not be allowed to file a case on the company. Next, a company is capable of owning, enjoying and disposing of property, yani ki realizing or selling off the property in its own name. It's not in the member's name that any of this is happening. It is in the company's own name. Although the capital and the assets are contributed by the shareholders, the company becomes the owner of its capital and assets. So as soon as a company is formed, the company becomes the owner of the capital as well as the assets. The shareholders are not private or joint owners of the company's property. At no given point, the shareholder can say that this is my property. It is always the company's property, not the shareholder's private or joint property. And there is a landmark case under separate legal entity feature, which is Mekora versus Northern Assurance Company Limited. I will tell you the story of this case, then you can read the facts of the case. It will be easier for you. So what happens in this case? Let me erase this. Mekora versus Northern Assurance Company Limited. Mekora को हम M बुलाते हैं. Mr. M was the owner of a company. Owner of a company as in he founded the company, and this company owned timber. A company is allowed to own property in its own name. So the company had timber as its assets. Now what happens? Mr. M, in order to secure the stock of the company, he went to an insurance company. And what he did was, he insured the stock of the company in his own name. Mr. M insured the timber, stock of the company, yani ki timber, in his own name, not in the company's name. Now, company is the owner of timber. Timber owner is company. So, in any insurance case, you can get insurance on a particular good only if you are the owner of that good. So, company here is supposed to get insurance on the timber of the company, which is the stock of the company. But what happened here? Mr. M, Mekora, went to the insurance company and obtained an insurance on the company's timber in his own name, which is the first mistake here. Now, eventually there was a fire in the factory and the timber was lost in the fire. In the company, the timber got lost. So, when M went to claim the insurance from the insurance company rejected M's claim. They said that the company has taken no insurance, therefore the timber that belongs to the company cannot be insured. No claim will be given. So, M argued, how is this possible? I have insured the timber of the company in my own name and I personally did it. I remember it. So, when M fought a case and filed a case on Northern Assurance Company Limited, the court ruled the case in favor of Northern Assurance Company Limited. They said that the insurance company was absolutely right in rejecting the claim because technically the company had not insured the timber. It is Mr. M. Makora who had insured the company's timber in his own name. And M said that I am the complete owner of the company. In fact, he owns all the shares except one of the shares. This was his argument. He said that all except one of the shares of the company are owned by me. So I am technically the company myself. And the court rejected this plea and said that no, a company is distinct from that of its members. Mr. M one side, company on another side. So no claim was given to M nor the company because of one technical mistake. And the court said that as soon as a company is formed, the members of the company are going to be considered separate from the company itself. That is exactly what you will read in the facts of the case. Here, Makora versus Northern Assurance Company Limited. Makora was the holder of nearly all except one shares of a timber company. He was also a major creditor of the company. M insured the company's timber in his own name. The timber was lost in fire. M claimed insurance compensation, held the insurance company was not liable to him as no shareholder has any right to any item of the property owned by the company, for he has no legal or equitable interest in them. He has no equitable interest in them. He is not the owner of the assets. It is the company which is the owner of the assets. Hence, in this case, since the timber was not insured in the company's name, M could not claim the compensation from the insurance company, and the court ruled saying that the company is a separate legal entity and the company, timber company, is one person and M is another person. Therefore, no insurance claim was given. I hope the concept of separate legal entity, which is our first and primary feature, is completely clear. Okay, with this, we'll move on to our second one, which you have heard of before, but today you are even going to understand it properly. Perpetual succession. Remember Partnership Act में we had learned that in a partnership firm, unless it is mentioned in the contract, usually the death or insolvency of one of the partners will result in a dissolution of the firm, which is a problem. And that problem was solved in case of an LLP and a company. What happened in an LLP? Even if one partner dies or one partner becomes an insolvent, LLP will not get dissolved. The same thing happens in case of a company also. The death of a member or the insolvency of a member will not affect the continuance of the company. That's why you've probably heard of companies which were formed about 100 years ago but are still running and are still being continued. And obviously, the person who formed it is not the same individual who is continuing it. But a company has perpetual succession. Individuals do not have perpetual succession. The members do not have perpetual succession. The company does, because as soon as it is formed, it is a separate legal entity. So perpetual succession ka point says, members may die or members may change, but the company goes on till it is wound up on the grounds specified by the Act. Till it is wound up. Winding up is a procedure which the law will order. So it is the law or the law that creates the company, forms a company, and only law can destroy a company. No other reason, say, company will get dissolved just because a member dies or there is a change in the members. The company ka existence will not get affected. Law creates the company, law alone will destroy the company. The shares of the company may change hands infinitely, but that does not affect the existence of a company. Since company is an artificial person created by law, law alone can bring an end to its life. One more point. Its existence is not affected by the death or insolvency of the members. You can go through example 1. It is quite simple. एक example दिया है. In case of a company which had 7 members and all of them died in an aircraft. But the company still exists, unlike partnership as a form of business. ठीक है? So our second feature is also clear. First one was separate legal entity. Second one is perpetual succession. The third one is limited liability. And as much as I want to tell you about this feature, I will want to wait till we move to our next topic. So in your point 3, you can write later, done later. Do not worry, I will not forget it. I'm just following a specific order. You can write types of companies. When we do classification of companies, and you can write next to that liability. अभी नहीं समझ में आएगा what you're writing. What I mean is this will be covered later under the topic types of companies when we do classification of companies on the basis of liability of the members. That time I will cover this topic. In fact, I won't even have to do this because as soon as that is done, this will anyway be covered. So you can leave this point for now and go to our fourth point. Our fourth point talks about artificial legal person. We know that company is not a natural person like you and I. You and I are natural people. Company is an artificial person. It is created by law. So company is an artificial person which is created by a process other than a natural birth. ये देने की जरूरत नहीं थी, but ठीक है. It is legal or judicial as it is created by law. It is a person since it is clothed with all the rights of an individual. You will see some sentences being repeated from the separate legal entity point. Further, company being a separate legal entity can own property, have a bank account, raise loans, incur liabilities, enter into contracts. Even members can contract with the company, acquire rights against it, or incur a liability on it. It can sue. This is a new point. It can sue and it can be sued in its own name. You will not sue the members of the company if you have a problem with the company. It is the company that you will sue. Likewise, a company can also sue you because as soon as it's incorporated, it becomes a separate legal entity. It can do everything which a natural person can do except be sent to jail, take an oath, marry or practice a learned profession, and hence it's a legal person in its own sense. This is self-explanatory. I'm not getting into the details. And as soon as a company is incorporated, it becomes a legal person, an artificial but still a legal person. As the company is an artificial person, it can act only through some human agency, that is directors. जैसे LLP में we had designated partners. In case of a company, we have directors. The directors can either act on their own or through the common seal. They can authenticate its formal acts. So what is this common seal? We learn in the immediate next point. Finally, therefore, a company is called an artificial legal person. So ये concept pending है. This point will be covered in the next feature. Other than that, I hope artificial legal person as a concept is also fully covered. Yes, now let's do our common seal wala point. So, you and I are natural persons. Company is an artificial person. I'm sure that you have a signature of yours, something that you attest on every document or something that you use just, as an autograph. So that signature is for natural persons. For artificial persons, we use the phrase common seal. Common seal is a physical seal for a artificial legal person. So common seal, a company being an artificial person is not bestowed with the body of a natural being. This sentence was also not required. Therefore, it works through an agency of human beings called as directors. Now, what is common seal? यहाँ से शुरू होता है. Common seal is the official signature of a company. Just as individuals like you and I have signatures, company का भी एक official signature होता है, which is called as the common seal, which is affixed by the officers, that is used by the officers and the employees of the company on every single document. The common seal is a seal used by a corporation as the symbol of its incorporation, right? This is the concept of common seal of a company. Now, why did I tell you that it's important? Because in the year 2015, there was an amendment act, the Companies Amendment Act 2015, which made the common seal optional by omitting the words and a common seal from section 9. to provide an alternative mode of authorization for companies who opt not to have a common seal. So ever since the year 2015, the concept of common seal has become optional, and it is optional not just for a company, it is even optional for an LLP. It has become completely optional. In case a company does not have a common seal, the authorization shall be made by two directors or by the director and a company secretary wherever the company has appointed a company secretary. So, अपने options में you have common seal or second option is two directors, or if not for that, one director and a company secretary. Wherever the company has a company secretary. That is because having a company secretary is not mandatory for every company. There is a certain criteria which if you fall under, then you have to have a company secretary. So either you have a common seal or two directors or one director and a company secretary. These are our options. This is instead of a common seal. So these are four features, 4 out of 5 features which we have covered, features of a company. Now that you're clear with features of a company, separate legal entity, perpetual succession, artificial person, common seal, or beech mein the one that we skipped, limited liability. Now let's go to the meaning of a company. Very simple. The meaning is extremely simple. Our first page, 6.2 here. In the words of Professor Hani, a company is an incorporated association. We know that without incorporation, a company will not get its identity, which is an artificial person created by law having a separate entity with a perpetual succession and a common seal. This and a common seal is the phrase that is omitted. But all of these are nothing but the features of the company that we just did. So this definition is completely covered. Now there is a definition given under the Companies Act 2013 which I want you to remember. You will have to remember this definition as a foundation student, as an intermediate student, as a CA final student, as an article, and even after that. According to Section 2, Clause 20 of the Companies Act 2013, the definition of a company is given, and the definition reads, company means a company incorporated under this act. Which is this act? This act yani Companies Act 2013 or under any previous company law. What is the meaning of previous company law? Companies Act 2013 was an amended act. उसके पहले also there have been Companies Act. It's not like Companies Act 2013 is the first Companies Act. इसके पहले वाला act था Companies Act 1956. उसके पहले वाला we had Companies Act 1913. So under any previous law plus any other previous law, if a company is incorporated under this act, यानी कि Companies Act 2013 or under any previous company law 1956, 1913 या उससे पहले जो भी Companies Act था, if the company has been incorporated under that act also, it will be regarded as a company under Section 2, Clause 20 of the Companies Act 2013. A very important definition. This word or is important. This word means is important. Means का मतलब है restricted. That means nothing other than this. Nothing other than this can be called a company under the Companies Act 2013. What about any foreign company? Will it be called as a company? No, that will be called as a foreign company because it has not been incorporated under this act or under any of our previous company laws. It has been incorporated outside India. So that will not be called as a company. That will be specifically expressly called as a foreign company. ठीक है? This definition is important. Section 2 clause 20. If you are very lucky, आपके एग्जाम में भी क्वेश्चन आ सकता है. what is a company and what are the features of a company. In fact, features mein they can even ask you specifics. They can say explain the feature of separate legal entity ya fir explain the feature of artificial legal person. Any specific points can also be asked. Now we know the meaning of a company and the features of a company very clearly, except for that one feature. I know it is bothering me that I have not finished it, but I will. In part 2, we will complete that in the first 10 minutes itself. Now we'll go to our introduction. The Companies Act 2013 was enacted to consolidate and amend the law relating to companies. Consolidate and amend. Consolidate matlab join all the other previous company laws. Ever since Companies Act came into existence, all of those have to be joined, and the previous law, Companies Act 1956, was amended and Companies Act 2013 was introduced. The Companies Act 2013 was preceded by the Companies Act 1956. Uske pehle Companies Act 1913. The Companies Act 2013 contains 470 sections and 7 schedules also. And this entire act has been divided into 29 chapters, and a major part of this act is not just sections, it has a lot of rules as well, companies rules. You will not learn a lot about the rules at the foundation level, you will learn it in your intermediate level. Okay? Now let's move on from the introduction and go to the applicability of Companies Act 2013. The applicability generally comes under section 1. Not important, but हर एक act में जो section 1 होता है, that covers the concept of applicability. Applicability मतलब for who or to who is the Companies Act 2013 applicable. You don't have to learn this perfectly in detail. I'm just going to give you a basic understanding of who are the organizations or which are the organizations to which the Companies Act 2013 applies. Translating to किसको Companies Act 2013 follow करना है. Okay, who has to follow the Companies Act 2013? First, any company incorporated under this act, that is Companies Act 2013, or under any previous company law, right? If you have incorporated under Companies Act 1956, 1913, or any of those previous companies laws, now you will have to follow Companies Act 2013. Next, insurance companies. Next, banking companies. Next, companies engaged in the generation or supply of electricity. So let's take these 3. Insurance companies will also have to follow Companies Act 2013. But what is given in bracket? In bracket it is told to us, except where the provisions of the said act, that is Companies Act 2013, are inconsistent with the provisions of the Insurance Act 1938 or the IRDA Act 1999. A simple meaning of this, see, this is an insurance company. Insurance companies के लिए there is another act. The governing act of insurance companies is Insurance Act 1938 or the IRDA Act 1999. So their primary act will be this. If at all anything is given in the Companies Act 2013 which is contradicting their primary act, they will not follow Companies Act 2013, they will follow their primary act. So insurance companies will have to follow Insurance Act as well as Companies Act, unless what is told in Companies Act is contradicting what is told in Insurance Act. Same logic for banking companies. Banking companies के लिए the primary act is the Banking Regulation Act 1949. So they will have to follow that act as their primary act, and they will also have to follow Companies Act. But if the act is contradicting each other, which it does not, but if at all the act is contradicting, then they will have to follow Banking Regulation Act first, and only then, if it's not contradicting, they will follow Companies Act. Same logic for companies engaged in the generation or supply of electricity, except where the provisions of the above act are inconsistent with the provisions of the Electricity Act 2003. So suppose Electricity Act 2003 says something which is contradicting Companies Act, the companies engaged in the generation or supply of electricity will follow only Electricity Act, otherwise they will follow both the acts. Next, any other company which is governed by any special act for the time being in force, or such bodies corporate which are incorporated by any act for the time being in force, and as the central government by notification may specify. So basically these organizations or these bodies will have to follow Companies Act. Companies which are incorporated under this act or any of the previous laws, insurance companies, banking companies, companies engaged in the generation or supply of electricity, or any other company which is notified specially in this behalf. This was the applicability of Companies Act, and now we are done with 6.1, the introduction part, and 6.2, which is the meaning and the features of the company. Now the concept that we are going to do is related to separate legal entity, and we are going to look at that very much in detail. Iske liye there are some case laws that I want you to learn and know, and those case laws I feel would be better if you understood it in the form of a story. Just learn it like a story, listen to what happens in the case, and then we learn the conclusion part of it. So let's start with the next topic, the corporate whale theory. So let's begin with our next topic, corporate whale theory. Corporate whale theory. Corporate का मतलब we know, theory का मतलब we know. What is whale? Whale is a parda, a curtain, something that is blocking one thing from another. Corporate whale theory simply states the fact that as soon as a company is incorporated, the company becomes a separate person and the members become a separate person. In between the company and the members, there is a veil that is separating them, and that's why this theory is termed as corporate whale theory. There is a parda which is separating the members from the companies. There is a shield which is separating the members and the company. That's why this concept is called as corporate whale theory. I've done this example before, but still, if DV is a member of X Private Limited, there is a company called X Private Limited. This is the company and this is the member of that company. DV is a member of that company. If X Private Limited has taken a loan from the bank of whatever amount, it is the company that is liable to repay the loan to the bank. Now, on default by the company, the bank will obviously file a case on the company to recover the money. But the bank can only file a case on the company. The bank cannot file a case on DV, the member of a company, to recover that money. Because as soon as this X Private Limited was incorporated, X Private Limited becomes one person and DV is another person. Separate legal entity. Company is separate from that of its members, and what is separating them is a parda, a veil that is created. So that's why this is the concept of corporate whale theory. It is a very important concept, and this is the main reason company is differentiated from other forms of organization, that it is a separate legal entity. Separate from who? Separate from the members who once upon a time formed the company. So DV is a separate person and company X Private Limited here becomes a separate person, and in this case the members of the company are protected from whatever the company does. See, company has taken a loan here from the bank. Company has defaulted the payment of that loan. So why should the member suffer? It is the company who has taken the loan. Company has defaulted the loan. Company should suffer. For the actions of the company, the member of the company shall not be held liable. Is logic say this concept of corporate whale theory has been established, and there is a landmark case which explains the concept of corporate whale and why that judgment was taken. So for this case, we have quite a few cases in this concept of corporate whale theory. Towards the end of your chapter, there are certain handwritten notes which have been attached. It's like the case law has been explained in the form of a story so that you understand it in a better way. You can make your own notes while I'm teaching you, or you can refer that to remember the story later. So I'll open that. It's here. Corporate whale. Corporate whale का पहला case law, the main and the most important case law. Anybody who has studied company law could not have studied company law without learning this case. Solomon versus Solomon and Company Limited. Now, some students, while reading it at the first glance, get confused, saying that why is he filing a case on himself? No, he is not filing a case on himself. Solomon here is filing a case on the company. Company is a separate person when compared to the individual. So, what happens in this story? Let's go through it step by step. We learn it like a proper timeline के हिसाब से चलते हैं. There was a person called as Aaron Solomon who was engaging a business, a sole proprietorship business tha, which was in the shoe manufacturing industry, and he was carrying it on himself. Now, with the fear that this will have unlimited liability and the fact that it may not have perpetual succession, he decided to stop this in a sole proprietorship manner and convert it into a company. So what Aaron Solomon did was he opened a company called as Solomon and Company Limited. That was the name of the company, and this company, as soon as Solomon and Company Limited was formed, what Solomon and Company Limited did, they purchased this business. Solomon and Company Limited as a individual, as a body corporate, purchased this individual ka business. This is a separate person. This person purchased the business of Aaron Solomon for a consideration of 38,782 British pounds. The figures are not very important. Concept pe focus karo. And since it is a public limited company, the structure of the members is as follows. So the number of members were 7, and this is their shareholding. First, we have Aaron Solomon himself, who held 20,000 shares at £1 each. His wife held 1 share. He had 4 sons who held 1 share each, and he had a daughter who held 1 share. So this was the structure of the members. Together there were 7 of them, with obviously Aaron Solomon who was running the show, and these people were just there to fulfill that minimum criteria of 7 members. And alongside the shareholding, the loan structure of the company is given as follows. Firstly, Aaron Solomon himself had given a debt to the company, 10,000 pounds. But when he gave this debt was secured. It's a secured debenture with the charge on the company's assets, that tomorrow if something happens, Aaron Solomon would be able to recover it from the assets of the company. So loan structure ke first point pe we have secured debentures, 10,000 pounds. Aaron Solomon himself had lent this money to the company with the charge on the company's assets. Charge matlab security was the company's assets. Then there were also other borrowings, other unsecured creditors who had given a loan of 7,000 pounds. So this was the loan structure of the company, and balance ka jo bhi consideration is there, that was there in cash. So with this structure, they formed Solomon and Company Limited. इसमें shareholding भी आ गया, loan structure भी आ गया, and balance जो भी amount था वो cash में they gave it to Solomon and purchased the shoe manufacturing business. And the company went on its operations for a considerable period of time. After about 1 year, because of the economic conditions back then, the company had to be wound up. Immediately after 1 year, the company went into liquidation, went into winding up. And at the time of liquidation, the company's financial position was this. The assets of the company amounted to 6,000 pounds and the liabilities of the company amounted to 17,000 pounds. How did we get the 17,000? इसमें से 10,000 the secured debentures part है and 7,000 is the unsecured creditors का loan है. So this is the liability का total and the assets were amounting to 6,000 pounds. Now, when the liquidator was carrying on the settlement, the unsecured creditors said that they should get paid first. That means out of the 6,000 pounds of assets, this amount, 7,000 pounds should be paid to the unsecured creditors. That is 6,000 pounds are going to be paid to the unsecured creditors. They said that Aaron Solomon should not be given the preference, even though it is a secured debt. He should not be given the preference of payment because he himself is the owner of the company. He is the company itself. He is running the entire show. He is the one making decisions of the company. If the company makes profits, he is the one taking the profits. Anything that the company does, he himself is doing. He is the representative of the company himself. So why are you paying him? That would be unfair. So unsecured creditors claim that they should get paid first because they are the people who have given the loan to the company and they are the outsiders. Whereas Aaron Solomon is an internal banda only. Why should he get paid? This was the claim of the unsecured creditors. So unsecured creditors claim that Solomon cannot be treated as a secured creditor as he was the managing director of a one-man company. Even though there were 7 members, he was the one who was running the show. So he was the company himself and they said that the company should not pay him. So what he did, he filed a case on the company when the liquidator made a different decision and the judgment was in favor of Aaron Solomon. The court the lordship back then was of the opinion that even though Aaron Solomon is the one running the show, as soon as a company is incorporated, Aaron becomes a different person, the company is a different person. So once the company is incorporated, separate legal entity gets placed, and as soon as the separate legal entity concept gets placed, there is a parda between Aaron and the company that makes Aaron a different person, Aaron Solomon a different person, and the company a different person. So the company is not paying itself, the company is paying Aaron Solomon. And why is the company choosing to prefer Aaron Solomon's payment first? Because his debt was the debt which was actually secured. It is not that because he is the owner of the company and he's the MD of the company that he's getting paid first. He is getting paid first because his debt was secured against the assets of the company. So that's why this happens to be the landmark judgment in terms of the concept of corporate whale theory. After this judgment, it was very clear and established. Whenever there is an issue regarding this concept of corporate whale or separate legal entity, this is the landmark case that is referred. Solomon versus Solomon and Company Limited. Focus more on the conceptual understanding and clarity of this case law rather than the facts and figures. The facts and figures are also given in your study material. It is also given here. You can read from wherever it is convenient to you. So I hope with this case, the meaning of corporate whale is even more crystal clear in your minds, that as soon as a company is incorporated, company is a separate person and the members who formed it are a separate person. So there is a concept of separate legal entity. But once this concept started becoming prominent, or once people understood this, they started to take advantage of this situation. How can a person take advantage of this situation? So let's say that I form a company. I'll form a company. I'm the one who is running all the operations of the company along with 2-3 other people with me. And the company starts committing frauds. It's all my mind which is committing the fraud, but through the company. And suppose the company gets caught or something starts happening, I would be secure because the company is a separate person. I am a separate person. I am not responsible for the actions of the company. If this starts happening, a lot of people would suffer. So since humans started taking advantage of this concept of corporate whale, that company is separate, I am separate, I can still do what I want in the name of the company and nothing will happen to me. Members started taking advantage of this situation. And that's why several exceptions were created. In these exceptions, what can the court do? The court can lift the corporate whale. Now, if I go back to your lifting of corporate whale, assume that this is the whale. This line that you see, that is the whale. Okay? If at all people started taking advantage of this, that company is separate, I am separate, whatever the company does, nothing can happen to me. In these cases, what the court decided was they have the power to lift the corporate whale. वो पर्दे को उठा सकते हैं. And if it is a shield, they have a power to pierce this corporate whale. And as soon as they pierce this corporate whale or lift the corporate whale disappears. And as soon as this corporate whale disappears, what happens? The member as well as the company will be treated as one single entity. The members as well as the company will be treated as one single entity. This is only where the court feels that the intent of the company or the members is to do something unlawful. Not in every case. Only court is given the power to lift the corporate veil or pierce the corporate veil. And what we will study now are which are the cases in which the court can lift the corporate veil or pierce the corporate veil. This is a very important question for your exam, and not just a direct question, it could even be a case study question. I'm going to teach you 5 different cases, 5 different reasons or possibilities how people are taking advantage of this. I know that this much of depth may not be required for your foundation level exams, but I still want to give you whatever conceptual clarity I can give you, and then for your exam point of view, you can remember how much you feel should be required for your exam. But from the knowledge point of view, I want to cover all of this conceptually. I may not be able to cover each and every fact of the case as it is, but my focus is going to be on making sure that you understand the concept more than you understand the facts. So 5 different cases. What are these cases? These cases are where the court has the power to lift the corporate veil, and in these cases the court has disregarded the concept of corporate veil. The court has disregarded the fact that company is a separate person, member is a separate person. In all of these 5 cases, because of what the case is, because of what the members and the company have done, that is why the court is disregarding this concept of corporate veil and treating the company and the member as a single entity. So alternatively, what we are studying now, this topic could be titled as exceptions to the corporate veil theory, because in all of these cases, member and the company would be treated as one single entity. Let's start with the exceptions of corporate veil. पहले एक छोटू सा story, a simple background story. Then we'll go to the main case law which I want to explain. Now, once upon a time, when we learned the Indian Contract Act 1872, we learned that trading with enemy is opposed to public policy, and therefore any contract where you are entering into a contract and that contract happens to be with another person who is an alien enemy. You must be remembering this term, alien enemy. Alien enemy matlab another country with which your country has a war or a dispute going on. And as soon as your country has a dispute with that other country becomes an alien enemy. And because they are an alien enemy, any form of trading with the alien enemy is considered void. It is considered opposed to public policy, and that is why it is considered void, right? So alien enemy, we have understood. Trading with that alien enemy is also considered void. Now what happens here? Generally, if I'm going to teach you, let's take 2 cases. Country A को लेते हैं. This is country A and this is country B. Okay, there is one company here, company A. There is another company here, company B. Both of these companies are in one country, country number A. And in country number B, let's say there is X company. Suppose country number B is declared as an alien enemy. Company A or company B cannot enter into a contract with X company, right? Company A or company B cannot enter into a contract with X company because X company happens to be in country B, which is an alien enemy. But is there any restriction in law which says that you cannot trade with another person in the same country if you are following the law or if you are doing something legal? Absolutely no restriction. Company A can enter into contracts with company B. Company B can enter into contracts with company A, and इसमें alien enemy का problem आता ही नहीं है because both of them are in the same country. So having a contract between these 2 companies is not going to be a problem at all. Problem will happen if company A or company B are entering into a contract with country B ka company X. Okay. Now, company A and company B entered into a contract, which is absolutely valid. There was no problem at all. Company A had to pay some money. Company A owed money to company B. So when company B did not receive that money from company A, company B filed a case on company A for the recovery of money. Company B filed an action. They went to sue company A. When company B filed a case on company A said that company B is an alien enemy, so we are not paying any money to company B. And company B started defending themselves, saying, how can you call us alien enemy? We are in the same country. How did we become alien enemy? So company A replied, saying that you might be here, you might be in country A, you might not technically look like my alien enemy, but this company B, you are entirely being controlled by X company. They said that company B has majority of the members, say 99% of the members, 99% of the members of company B are from country B, from X company. So X company is the one who is holding 99% of the stake of company B. That time company B said, so what? Members are separate, company is separate. Company B is a separate legal entity, company B is in country A, you have to pay us the money. So court felt that no, there is something fishy here. What did the court do? They lifted the corporate veil and realized that the members here have incorporated company B in country A only so that they can enter into other contracts with different companies in country A, because X company cannot enter into contracts directly, because X company would be an alien enemy. So the objective of creating company B was solely to enter into contracts with this country ka other companies, which is again fabricated as another company, which is unfair because you are technically an alien enemy. How are you technically an alien enemy? Because this company B, even though geographically is located in country A, it is completely controlled by another country ka company, X company, and this country happens to be an alien enemy. So the court lifted the corporate veil and said that X company, as well as, that is the members of company B as well as company B, will be treated as a single entity, and this is trading with enemy, therefore it will not be allowed, and the court lifted the corporate veil. Let's look at the actual case. This is what happened in the actual case. It's just that the names were not mentioned. Now that your concept is clear, we can go to the name. So we'll start with the first exception. However, the corporate veil can be lifted or pierced by the court, in which cases where the company law disregards the principle of separate legal entity or corporate personality, then the company will be treated the same as its members. Why will the court do that? Only if the people are taking advantage of this. So case number 1, where you are creating another company, though an alien enemy, you are fabricating it to be of the same country so that they can enter into a contract. Therefore, to determine the character of the company, whether the company is actually a friend company or an alien company, the court may lift the corporate veil. And the first exception is trading with enemy. And this landmark case was Daimler Company Limited versus Continental Tire and Rubber Company. Now, remember the story based on our concept wala example. There is a company in Germany and there are two companies both in England. There is Continental Tire and Rubber Company, that is CTRC, and Daimler Company Limited, which is also in England. And this Daimler Company Limited and Continental Tire and Rubber Company Limited have a contract with each other. This Daimler Company Limited is entirely controlled by the company which is in Germany. So technically, they have incorporated this Daimler Company Limited only to enter into contracts with other companies in England. So let's find out what happens. All the shares except one share of Daimler Company Limited were held by this German company. That means the members of this England company are nothing but German company. So that's why it's an alien enemy only. Daimler Company Limited did not receive the money due from CTR company and sued them for the payment. CTR, Continental Tire and Rubber Company, claimed that the contract becomes void as they are dealing with an alien enemy. As per contract law, they said that Daimler Company Limited is an alien enemy. Daimler Company Limited further claimed that they are in England and the members are in Germany. Yes, they agreed. The members are there in Germany, but company is in England and company is a separate person, member is a separate person. So there is a separate legal entity wala concept. That was the argument given by Daimler Limited. And what did the court do? The court lifted the corporate veil and said that the German company, that is the member, and Daimler Company Limited will be treated as one single entity. This was your first case. Anytime the court wants to determine the true character of the company, to check whether the company is an enemy or the company is a friend, the court can lift the corporate veil. So this was our first case, and like this, we have 4 more interesting cases. Let's move on to the second one. Our second case is quite interesting, so much that whenever I take up an offline class, no, after giving all of these 5 stories, I ask all my students ki which one is their favorite case. You know, when you find out what is a person's favorite crime, it helps you understand how that person thinks better. And 99% of my students choose this second case. The second case is also going to be a case study question which can be asked separately, so we'll understand that. Simple case law, but very smart individual. Not so smart because he got caught, but still very smart. Dinshaw Manekji Petit versus the Commissioner of Income Tax, CIT, yani Commissioner of Income Tax. So Dinshaw Manekji Petit was an individual who earned huge dividend and interest income. He had made several investments, and on those investments he earned interest income, and he also earned huge dividend. Dividend is the part of the company's profits which the company gives to its shareholders. Now, anytime you are earning a lot of income, you have to pay income tax. So to avoid paying heavy taxes, what this person did is he formed 4 private companies. This Dinshaw Manekji Petit formed 4 private companies. And these companies actually had no businesses. Operations kuch nahi kar rahe the ye companies. There were 4 private companies, but there were no operations that these private companies were doing. They were just formed for the purpose. Which purpose? Let's find out. Next point. What he did is he transferred all his investments to the companies. He made these companies start investing. He personally stopped investing. He was investing through the companies. So now he did not earn the income directly. Who earned the income? The companies started earning the income. And back then, he had to pay a higher tax compared to the companies. So which is why this seemed like a fairer option to him. He was saving a lot of tax by diverting this income to the companies. So he transferred his investments to these companies. The companies now earned income on these investments. He did not earn. But then what is the point? He is not even going to be able to use that money. No, he is. What he did is the companies, the private companies that he formed who earned the income, these companies then loaned back the same money to Dinshaw Manekji Petit. So what happens, let me just draw that figure. Dinshaw, yeah. This person, Dinshaw Manekji Petit, used to earn a lot of income. And he had to pay a lot of tax on that. So he didn't want to do this directly. So what he did was he created 4 companies. Let's say ABCD, all 4 private companies. He created these 4 private companies. He transferred his investments to these private companies, and these private companies started investing in other companies. So now whatever income was being earned, the companies earned income. The companies earned income. The income did not come into his books of accounts directly. It did not come into Dinshaw Manekji Petit's accounts. So he did not have to pay personal income tax on that. The company had to deal with it. Then what the company did, how did he get that money? The company then transferred to him loans. Whatever money the company earned, he took it from those 4 private company in the form of loan. Now when I take a loan, I am getting the money. Yes. Do I have to pay tax on that? No. So he avoided the payment of tax. Then how did the government figure this out? How did the income tax department understand this? So what happens is when you take a loan, if your intent is loan, you would repay it. Here, the loan was definitely taken by Dinshaw, but Dinshaw Manekji never repaid the money to the companies. So that's when on investigation they realized that something is fishy here. And when they told Dinshaw Manekji Petit, no, you have to pay tax on this, his defense was that he is a separate person and these four companies are separate people. So company is a separate legal entity, so you cannot attack me. I am safe. That time what did the court do? The court said no, your intention of forming these four companies was only to reduce the payment of tax. It was only to avoid this obligation of payment tax, of the payment of tax. So to protect our revenue, we are lifting the corporate veil. So what did the court do? The court lifted the corporate veil and treated these four private companies as sham companies, and they said that the companies as well as Dinshaw Manekji Petit would be considered as a single entity and not as a separate legal entity, which is what I have explained in the case here. This arrangement which reduced his taxable income, the department said no. To protect our revenue, we cannot let you assume the fact that company is a separate legal entity. The court lifted the corporate veil and said that Dinshaw Manekji Petit and the four companies that he created will be treated as one single entity. Now you know why most students like this case law the most. So this was our second case, and our second case the intent was to protect revenue or tax, the court can lift the corporate veil. First case was to determine the character of the company, whether the company is an enemy or the company is a friend, the court can lift the corporate veil. So these were two cases. Let's go to the third one. You can decide your favorite after the cases are over, okay? You don't have to decide right now. So this third one also I like a lot. In fact, my favorite one is the third one. We'll see what happens in this case also. I know I can show you the case law directly, but pehle concept karte hain, fir we'll learn the case law. So you know that our country has a lot of acts and you are supposed to follow whichever act is applicable to you if you fit into that category. So there was a company called Associated Rubber Industries Limited in Gujarat, which was obviously in the business of rubber, and they had revenue from their operations. They also had dividend income from whatever they invested in other companies. They earned dividend. So revenue income bhi tha, dividend bhi tha, and they had a few employees. And this company was obligated to pay bonus to its employees. There is an act in India called as Payment of Bonus Act, and according to that act, if you fall under the specific criteria, you're required to pay bonus to your employees. And ARIL, that is the Associated Rubber Industries Limited, had to pay this bonus. And bonus in India is paid as a percentage of profits. Based on the profits, higher the profit, higher the bonus, lower the profit, lower the bonus. But the logic is your employees have contributed and helped you in order to make that profit. So you have to share a little bit to them. That is the concept of bonus. So what happens is naturally if the company's profits are higher, the company will have to pay a higher bonus. And for a few years, ARIL went on doing that. They were paying the bonus on the revenue as well as on the dividend income. Then they realized, we are making the investments. It is all our strategy, but dividend income is coming as a part of our profits and employees are also getting a share of that, which they felt ki no boss, we should stop this. Let's find out a jugaad for this. Let's find out a solution for this. So to avoid this legal responsibility of having to pay higher bonus based on the profits, what ARIL did is they formed another subsidiary company. Now I know you are giving me a look ki what is this subsidiary company? I am not teaching you right now. You will have to hold on to types of companies. But let's say subsidiary company is like where this company is controlling this company. So they created a company called ARIL Holdings Limited, which is a subsidiary of ARIL Limited. ARIL Limited is the controlling company. Acha, we'll use that word. ARIL Limited is the controlling company. And so this subsidiary company is the one which is being controlled by the controlling company. So जो भी ये company करता है, it is as good as this company doing it. Okay. Now what they did is they diverted all their investments to ARIL Holdings company, and ARIL Holdings company started making the investments and they started earning dividend. So naturally, the dividend from the original company, controlling company, disappeared. So when the dividend disappeared, a major portion of their profits reduced. So the profits reduced. And what was the result of the profit reducing? The bonus also reduced. Now when the bonus reduced, the workmen, the employees of this company started feeling that something is fishy. They're like, company to is growing. They are doing so well, our operations are doing so well. How are our bonuses getting reduced? This was the question in the minds of the workmen, and the workmen did not stop there. The workmen of this company filed a case on this company saying that you are doing some golmaal in order to reduce the profits so that you reduce the payment of our bonus. And when it went to the court, we'll see what happens. So this is our third case. The third case, the reason the court can lift the corporate veil is when they feel that the company has created something in order to avoid a legal obligation. The name of the case law here is Workmen of Associated Rubber Industries Limited, Bhavnagar, which is a place in Gujarat, versus the Associated Rubber Industries Limited, again in Bhavnagar. So ARIL, short form ARIL, earned a certain portion of their profits from sales and dividend income. And ARIL was legally required to pay bonus to their employees. They fell into the criteria, Bonus Act was applicable to them. And bonus is calculated as a percentage on profits. So naturally, higher the profits, higher the bonus. So in order to reduce the profits, not from their company, but only from their books of accounts, ARIL created a wholly owned subsidiary company. That 100% the company was being controlled by ARIL. So it's naturally ARIL only who is acting. So then they transferred their investments to the subsidiary. So let me show you this. Earlier, ARIL used to make profits because of their sales and the dividend income. Now, after they have created this subsidiary company, the subsidiary company took over the investment. So, dividend income stopped coming into ARIL's books. So, ARIL only earned profits on their sales. So, major portion of their income reduced, and naturally, when the income reduces, the profit reduces, the bonus will also reduce. Since the profits reduced, the bonus payable to the workmen also reduced, and not naturally reduced, artificially reduced. It's not like the company stopped making profits. It's just that they created another subsidiary and made that subsidiary get profits. And that subsidiary does not have to pay any bonus because that subsidiary did not have any employees itself. Bonus though you will have to pay only when you have an employee or when you have the limited number of employees. So now the workmen, on observing the reduction in the bonus, filed a case on ARIL. And ARIL defended themselves saying that they only earned profits from the sale of rubber and the other income was now earned by their subsidiary. And that subsidiary is a separate person. Though the member of that was ARIL Holdings 100%, the member will not be a same person, it will be a separate person, and the subsidiary company would be a separate person. And the court realized that this entire thing was a sham, and ARIL only did this so that they can avoid the legal obligation of paying bonus to their employees. The subsidiary had no real business. The only purpose was to reduce the parent company's net profit so that they can reduce the bonus. So the court lifted the corporate veil and said that ARIL and its subsidiary ARIL Holdings Limited will be treated as one entity and not a separate entity. This was the case law which I found most interesting. So now you know 3 cases. From these 3 cases, you choose your favorite after we finish the remaining 2. The next one is also quite nice actually. Case 4. In case 4, what they did is, they started to form subsidiaries to act as an agent. Now subsidiary ka technical meaning I haven't taught you yet. We will figure out as and when we go to that topic. But right now you know subsidiary matlab controlled. Controlled company is subsidiary company, and the company which is controlling usko hum holding company bolte hain. So if I am controlling you, You are subsidiary, I am holding. If X company is controlling Y company, X company will become the holding company and Y company would become the subsidiary company. Itna knowledge is sufficient to understand case 4. So case 4 is between Merchandise Transport Limited versus British Transport Commission. What happens in this case? Merchandise Transport Limited is obviously a company which is in the business of transport, and to move goods from one place to another, they need vehicles. That vehicles ka license approval is given by British Transport Commission. And back then, British Transport Commission wanted to encourage new organizations or new companies to get formed. So they had put a limit on the maximum number of vehicles per transport company was allowed. So Merchandise Transport Company had exhausted their limit. They had reached their limit, so they could not get approval for any more vehicles. But they wanted to scale their business. They were not happy with the number of vehicles. So they needed a license for which they applied to British Transport Commission. So Merchandise Transport Limited sent an application to British Transport Commission. The license applicable for vehicle permit limit was rejected by the British Transport Commission as Merchandise Transport Limited had already reached their limit and British Transport Corporation wanted to encourage new companies also to take part. Merchandise Limited said that ठीक है, we cannot get a new license or we cannot get the number of vehicles to increase, कोई बात नहीं. We will form another company, a subsidiary company, which we will control fully, and we will make that subsidiary company apply for the license of license to British Transport Commission. So Merchandise Transport Limited formed a subsidiary company and applied for a license through that company. They didn't apply directly, they applied indirectly. इसको indirect application भी बोल सकते हैं. The British Transport Commission, on digging, eventually learned that the subsidiary company was fully controlled by Merchandise Transport Limited and they denied the license to the subsidiary company also. So that time Merchandise Transport Limited filed a case on British Transport Commission and said that you denied the license to us, we accept it, we have reached our limit. How can you deny the license to another company? That company, subsidiary company, is a separate legal entity. Even though we are the sole members of that company, members are separate, the company is separate. And that time the British Transport Commission said, no, your objective of opening that subsidiary company was not so that the subsidiary company carries on any business. The objective was only so that that person can act as an agent for you, which is not okay. You are taking advantage, you are abusing this concept of corporate veil theory, and we are lifting it. So the court lifted the corporate veil and said that Merchandise Transport Limited and the subsidiary that it formed shall be treated as one single entity. So anytime you are forming another subsidiary simply to act as an agent because you can't act yourself, technically you only are acting. If I translate this entire case law into a simple story, let's say that I wanted to go buy something and I was banned from buying that something for whatever reasons. I, Deepika, was not getting permission to buy that. So I sent another friend of mine to buy it on my behalf. Will that friend get it? No, because that friend is buying it on my behalf. And technically here, both of us would be considered as a single entity, which is exactly what happened here. Merchandise Transport Limited just formed another subsidiary so that that subsidiary can act as an agent for merchandise transport. It's not like that subsidiary was a separate business. It was theirs itself, which is why the court felt, no, this is not allowed. We are lifting the corporate veil. So this was our fourth case. Recap karo from the top. First one, the court can lift the corporate veil to determine the true character of the company, whether the company is an enemy or a friend. Second, if the court feels like no, they want to protect their revenue or they want to protect the tax, the court can lift the corporate veil. Third, if the court feels that the company is formed just to avoid a legal obligation, they don't have any other intent, just take legal obligation avoid karne ke liye they have set up a company, then again the court can lift the corporate veil. Fourth, if you have formed a subsidiary company just to act as your agent, not really to carry on any other business, then again the court can lift the corporate veil. And the last one is quite vast. It's not exhaustive to one case because they've said that if the company has been opened for the purpose of fraud or any improper conduct, I think that phrase is also there, fraud or improper conduct. Conduct as in actions, yeah, behavior. Or to defeat the law. There is a law which exists, there is an agreement or an arrangement which exists, and you want to find a way out of that agreement. So you form another company and perform through that company. So if your intention is fraudulent, or if your intention is to carry some improper activities, or to defeat the law, yani ki go against the law, then again the court can lift the corporate veil. The name of this case here is Guilford Motors Company Limited versus Mr. Horn. So these were two parties who had an arrangement. What sort of an arrangement? Let's read. Guilford Motor Limited had a director, managing director by the name Horn, who had worked there for a considerable length of time. Say 12 years he had worked in that company. Mr. Horn had worked in Guilford Motor Company as a managing director, who was now resigning from the firm. He wanted to resign from the firm. Can you stop a person from resigning from the firm? No, you can't stop a person from resigning from the firm. But of course you're afraid. 12 years this person knows the inside and the outside of your company. He knows everything what the company is up to, the ideas, the actions, the plans. He has access to books of accounts. Sab kuch pata hai. He's someone who knows everything about the company. So now if he resigns and starts another business of his own, it will directly affect the company. So what the company did is, they entered into a contract with Mr. Horn that he would not solicit the customers after he left the company. That you can do your own thing, but you can't do it in such a way that your intent is to steal the customers of our company. And Mr. Horn said that is absolutely reasonable. Most organizations have this. It's called solicitation. It's called non-solicitation. Forget it. Ignore this part. I can't pronounce that word. Okay. Most companies have this. When an employee leaves, they have some agreement with them such that the employee cannot take advantage of the fact that he was an employee. So after he left, what he did, he agreed to that arrangement. He definitely agreed to that arrangement. Then he set up a new company called Horn and Company Limited with his wife and associates as shareholders. So he himself was there, his wife was there, shareholders were there. And the company, Guilford Motors Limited, had a clause with him that he should not set up anything, or he should not carry on anything. Here, what he claimed is, I am not doing anything. Horn and Company Limited is doing whatever activities that are being done. He himself is not performing. Horn and Company Limited is performing, and Horn and Company Limited is a separate legal entity. Mr. Horn is separate, Horn and Company is separate. That's when Guilford Motors filed a case on Horn, who defended that his wife was running the show, he was not running the show, and even if he was running the show, the company was running it. Company is a separate legal entity, Horn is a separate legal entity. That was his defense. What did the court do? The court lifted the corporate veil and said that the company, Horn and Co. Limited, and Mr. Horn would be treated as one single entity and not a separate legal entity. But why? It is because the intent of Mr. Horn in opening that company was fraudulent. He knew that he cannot do it on a personal capacity, so he was getting it done through the company. It was for improper conduct, or it was to defeat the law. Defeat the law matlab he had entered into an arrangement, right, that he won't do that. And he tried to find a way out. He tried to find a loophole here. So if your intent is to fraud the other person, or to make some improper conduct, or to defeat the law, then the court has the power to lift the corporate veil. In all these 5 cases, we learned these are exceptions to the concept of corporate veil theory. You can either refer this, or you can refer the study material, or you can refer the notes that I have given you. All of it will teach you the same thing. I'll just quickly glance through any point if we have missed it. Corporate veil theory, very, very important. डायरेक्ट क्वेश्चन भी हो सकता है, केस स्टडी क्वेश्चन भी आ सकता है. You have to be prepared anyway. So corporate veil refers to a legal concept where the company is identified separately from the members of the company. The corporate veil refers to the concept that the members of a company are shielded from the liability connected to the company's actions. Company जो भी act करती है, company will be responsible, members will not be responsible. That is the logic of corporate veil. if the company incurs any debts or contravenes any laws, the corporate veil theory concept implies that the members should not be liable for those errors. In other words, they enjoy corporate insulation, yani ki corporate security. They are secure for whatever actions the company has done. Company will be responsible, members will not be responsible. The shareholders are protected from the acts of the company, and iske liye we have a landmark case called Solomon versus Solomon and Company Limited. We have already seen this case, so you can read it on your own. The same thing is explained in the case. So, conclusion of this case clearly established that the company has its own existence, and as a result, a shareholder cannot be held liable for the acts of the company, even though he holds virtually the entire share capital, which is what happened in Solomon's case. Technically, his wife and 4 sons and the daughter were just there in order to fill the criteria. He himself was holding the entire share capital. Still, he is a separate legal entity. The whole law of corporation is in fact based on this theory of separate legal entity. But humans being humans started to misuse this concept of separate legal entity. So there are 5 cases where the court has the power to lift the corporate veil. In this lifting the veil, it means looking beyond the company as a legal person, that is, disregarding the concept of corporate entity and paying regard instead to the realities behind this legal facade. A lot of people made this into another advantage that they can take of law, but no, you have to ignore this legal facade, disregard the concept of corporate veil, and in those 5 cases, the court is lifting the corporate veil or piercing the corporate veil. When the courts ignore the company and concern themselves directly with the members or the managers, the corporate veil may be said to have been lifted, but only in appropriate circumstances. Those 5 circumstances, the courts are willing to lift the corporate veil, and that too when the questions of control are involved rather than merely a question of ownership. It's less important who owns it, it matters who controls it. So the members only completely are controlling it just to avoid a few things like I mentioned in those 5 cases. Then the court may feel that they can lift the corporate veil or pierce the corporate veil. So we saw those 5 cases, lifting of corporate veil. This is also extremely important. First, to determine the character of the company or to find out whether the company is an enemy or the friend. In this, we had Daimler Company Limited versus Continental Tire and Rubber Company. That same case is explained here. Next was to protect the revenue or the tax. Again, Dinshaw Manekji Petitwala case. Same case is explained here. This again is an important case study question. It has been frequently asked. The second point in itself. Third is where the company has been formed to avoid a legal obligation. Workmen employed in Associated Rubber Industries Limited, Bhavnagar versus the Associated Rubber Industries Limited. This case is also explained in the next page as well as in my notes. Whatever language may you understand, please remember that facts are less important when compared to the concepts. So the whole case is explained here. Our next topic was formation of subsidiaries to act as agents. Merchandise Transport Limited versus British Transport Commission. Same thing. A company may sometimes be regarded as an agent or trustee of its members of another company and may therefore be deemed to have lost its individuality in favor of its principal, which is what happened here. Merchandise Transport Limited just created another subsidiary. Technically, these guys are the principal, those other parties are the agents, and those agents had no individual recognition of their own. They were basically only there to act as agents of Merchandise Transport Limited, which is why the court lifted the corporate veil. And our last case was if the company is formed for fraud or improper conduct or to defeat the law. Isme we saw Guilford Motor Company versus Horn. So this was our part 1 where we learned a few things. We started with the features of a company, uske baad we went to the meaning of a company, then we did a few introduction wale points, then we saw the applicability of a company, And we saw the concept of corporate whale theory along with the landmark case Solomon versus Solomon and Company Limited. And then we also saw cases where the corporate whale will be lifted. These 5 cases, I've taught you 5 different case laws. You can refer whatever material you want as long as you're able to structure the answer perfectly. Yes. In our next video, part 2, we will be covering the types of companies.